Hello and welcome to the Tuesday, August 9th, 2022 meeting of the Long Meadow School Committee. School committees and other public bodies may continue to hold remote meetings through March 31st, 2023 under new legislation enacted last month. The statute, Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, extends quorum reductions for remote meetings. All votes, while at least one school committee member participates remotely, must be made by roll call vote. We will begin tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kevin, we'll turn it over to you for correspondence.
We received an email from Ms. Holly Gazy requesting reference for an agency the Northampton School Committee was considering for their superintendent search. That is it for correspondence.
Thank you very much. We move on to approval of minutes. There is a recommended motion.
I move that the school committee approve the minutes to the July 19th, 2022 school committee meeting as presented.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right. Do we have anyone?
Doesn't
Remote?
appear to be any.
No,
Just double checking.
Because
Yeah.
you are posted remote.
We'll continue to do roll call.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Diane. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? We move on to a roll call vote. Jonah?
Yes.
Mary?
Abstain.
Okay. Kevin?
Yes.
And yes for me. All right.
Is that, Diane, is that the, with the three,
If we have an abstention.
the three yeses and one abstention, is that?
Well, if that didn't pass because of that, I will put
Bring it
on
up
the
again
next
for
time.
next time.
Yeah.
Perfect.
The majority of the quorum?
I think it is
Okay.
the majority.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank
Okay.
you so much. All right, we will move on to visitor comments. We do not have any visitors here in the room. If there is anyone at home, make yourself known. You can raise your hand, share your screen. Nobody's? Correct. All right, moving forward, school committee announcements and recognitions. Does anyone have anything they'd like to address? All right, it was a quiet week. Here we go. Moving forward, business with guests. We are going to be hearing from you for this, correct, Dr. O'Shea?
Correct. The Tate Learning Center, as the committee knows, had petitioned the committee to consider securing the committee's approval for operating as a private special education day school in Long Meadow. Tate Learning Center is located at the Heritage Academy building on Converse Street, and ultimately they're hoping to serve around 15 or 20 or 25 students with very significant complex needs. There's sort of two parts to their approval. One is all private schools have to receive the approval of a school committee in order to operate in the town that the school committee oversees. Additionally, the Tate Learning Center would need to secure approval from the Mass DESE, from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. We've been back and forth with the folks at Tate for some time now. They've been very helpful, engaging. They seem like they're prepared to begin a great program. The first step for us, though, is for us to review the curriculum of the Tate Learning Center to ensure that it meets in efficiency and in scope, the efficiency and the curriculum that we offer here in Long Meadow. We also need to verify that they have practices in place to meet the compulsory attendance laws. So those are a couple things that that review is ongoing with the Tate Learning Center. I think Sue is meeting with them
Thursday.
on
Dean and I are
Thursday.
headed over to look at curriculum. Yeah.
So we've been back and forth with Tate Learning Center since the spring. I've spoken with the founder and operator, Christina Tatro, many times. Jean Fontaine has been over to the Tate Learning Center. Appears to be a great program, but they still haven't given us the documents that would be sufficient for us to conduct that curriculum review so that we can make an informed recommendation so that you can make an informed decision. So it's necessary to table that. No actions needed tonight, but for sure it will come up at a future meeting. if the curriculum materials they present to us are sufficient, and we feel that we can make a recommendation, it's possible that it'll come up at your August 23rd meeting. But we'll be in touch with the chair on that. So we can table that. No action is needed.
All right, questions from anyone on the committee related to that process or where we are at this time? All right, moving right along, administrative reports, back to you.
All right. Thank you. The summer is moving along. Sue and I just had a quick chat before the meeting saying it's been a busy summer. Summer's a great time to attack some of our strategic goals, and obviously it's a time that we're engaged in the hiring process. And so at the top of the hiring process list was our efforts to identify a successor to Amy Steck over at Blueberry Hill. And a screening committee had been put together. Thank you, Zach, for your participation on that. Screening committee had unanimously recommended a single finalist, Dr. David Allen. And so Dr. Allen spent some time with us last week. He met with the administrative team, he met with some teachers, he met with a group of parents, and then did a Zoom call of parents and teachers in the evening. And following that site visit, I had made the decision that I was prepared to appoint David as principal. We spent some time kind of pinning down the terms of the contract, and happy to report that he has been appointed principal at Blueberry Hill Elementary School. And we are looking at an August 15th start with Dr. Allen. So given his service at an elementary school at the American School in Chennai, India, his schedule's clear. He's prepared and ready to start up with us on August 15th. So Dr. David Allen, principal at Blueberry Hill Elementary School, and anticipate I'll bring him to, if it's okay, if you're interested, we could bring him to your next meeting on the 23rd of August, and he could be formally introduced to you and to the wider community. But he is eager to get started, and he's been back and forth with many members of the administrative team over the last few days, just so that he could be prepared to start quickly on the 15th. So David Allen. In your packet, a couple other items. In your packet is a copy of a memorandum of understanding between Long Meadow Public Schools and the Long Meadow Police Department. It's to identify the role and responsibility of the school resource officer that serves Long Meadow Public Schools. So Officer Pam Chaplin has been the longstanding school resource officer for us. She has an office here at the high school, but she busily serves all of our schools. This memorandum of understanding is reviewed and reactivated annually. This particular MOU is largely based on a model MOU that was advanced by a statewide commission earlier this year. So the document outlines the roles and responsibilities. It explains the information sharing practices. It explains the oversight of the school resource officer, and many other items. So if you have any questions on that, happy to take those. Finally, a few other things. Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative is actively working to identify a diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging coordinator. We have done some initial interviews and identified some finalists for that position, and the member districts, I think we're looking at doing those final interviews next week with a panel of superintendents. So one of the big things that Sue and I have been working on this summer is been along with Tom Landers, principal at the high school, is the LHS Educational Program Review. This is the review that's being conducted by the New England School Development Council with us. They're our partners on this. And that work is on track. They've conducted a preliminary review of our program of studies and a preliminary review of enrollment patterns. And we're on track for that, for NESDEC to conduct some focus groups at the end of September. So the hope is that the final report on that LHS Educational Program Review will be back to us in late October or early November. Thursday, joint meeting of the Long Meadow Education Association, representatives from the LEA and representatives from our administrative team to take a look at elementary schedules with an eye towards identifying ways to provide additional collaboration time and perhaps preparation time for our elementary educators. Next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, our admin team will be engaged in our annual administrative retreat. There's about 17 of us that will assemble to do some reflection as a team and individually, take a look at our leadership practices and evaluate where we are with some of our strategic goals, which that reminds me, we probably should talk at some point about having a joint school committee admin retreat type of activity. We've done that the last few years, and it's served us well, I'd say, so we can talk about a date for that, perhaps once the school year begins. And then on Friday, Mr. Mazza, town manager, and the town CFO and I will be on a call with the MSBA. It's called our kickoff call. It's the kickoff to the formal kickoff to the eligibility period associated with our building project. So just some of the things that are keeping us busy this summer. And if you have any questions on any of those, I'm happy to answer.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Go for it, Kevin.
Marty, thank you.
Yeah.
It's great to remind everybody that there's a lot of work going on in the summer, so thank you. And definitely exciting with the new principal at Blueberry and the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging search. That's super exciting. Thank you for updating us on that. I have a question about the MSBA stuff, and I'm fine if you want me to hold that. I know that comes up at two other points on the agenda.
Yeah.
Is now the time you want questions on that, or do you want me to wait?
Let's take the questions now, and we'll.
Perfect.
Yeah, we'll.
So I guess I would love for you to remind us, and by extension, the community of how quickly things will progress towards the fall town meeting. I guess I want to make sure that since I think that we're going to have something on the fall town meeting, that we all know what's happening and we give the community time to plan to attend the fall town meeting. And again, I'm guessing there aren't many people paying attention to this meeting this beautiful evening. But what is our plan for making sure the community is engaged and knows what's going on? Anyway, you get my point.
Yeah, for sure. And it's something that Nicole and I have been in conversation on. So I'll work forward to the town meeting is on October 25th, and it would be our hope, if all the stakeholding boards are in agreement, that we would ask the town to consider funding a feasibility study to take a real deep look at the needs of our middle schools. And these are comprehensive feasibility studies. Anticipate that it would be a significant investment that the town would have an opportunity to make, to take a look at the really much deeper dive than some of the facility assessment work that we've done in preparation for our work with the MSBA. And so to get to that point, we have a lot of work to do to engage the community, to update them on the status of the buildings, what the scope of the feasibility study would be, and also to let people understand what that commitment would be. I think when we talk about the needs of our middle schools, I think people want to rush to what's going to happen, what's the solution. This is such a multi-stage process that in October, the town would only be asked to consider funding a feasibility study. And that's just one juncture where the town gets to give us an additional green light to study the needs of the two middle schools. But Nicole has been in touch with our town moderator, Rebecca Townsend, to talk about how some of the structures she's had in place to create community dialogue, that we might be able to lean into some of those structures to make sure that people understand, what is in front of us. And then the other big task, in addition to the feasibility study, is the establishment of the building committee, which comes up later on in our agenda. We have to have that completed by the end of September. A standing building committee, and I won't get too deep into it right now, but it's something that we'll need to work in partnership with the select board on to make sure that that's a representative group, because that group will have to roll up its sleeves and get to work, for several years. It's a big undertaking to be on that building committee. So those are really the two things that are in front of us over the next few months. It's the establishment of the building committee, and it is the feasibility study. There's some other deliverables that we're responsible for, and including getting the MSBA information about our educational program, working with the MSBA to complete an enrollment study, and working with the MSBA to help them understand what our maintenance and capital planning practices are. So all of that stuff has to happen. The most pressing thing is the educating and engaging the community on the need for that feasibility study. And so I don't know if you want to chat about
Sure.
some of that stuff.
So to that end, we are, as we've already said, we're waiting for other stakeholder committees to also weigh in. I know this is expected to be on the select board meeting for next week. Once they have made the move to add this to the warrant, and the warrant is solidified, which would be the end of the first week in September, it's September 9th, something like that. Once that is all set, if the warrant is in and this feasibility study is in fact an item on the warrant for the October 25th meeting, then we would begin planning for some open forums. So we've already begun. Rebecca Townsend was kind enough to spend a lot of time on the phone with me last week, talking through all of the things that she's put into place over the years and all of the amazing contacts she has and how she's organized events to make it possible for the community to engage and discuss topics of interest. So she's also begun to reach out to some contacts who might be able to help with facilitating those events if they are things that we decide we would like to do moving forward. The ideal time would be roughly the first few weeks of October, so planning for that would begin in earnest once the warrant is certified and set and ready to go. So within the next couple of weeks, there will potentially be more information and also potentially a call for folks who might be interested in helping out at some community events where we can discuss some of the details of what a feasibility study is, what the ask would be, what some of the pros and cons and advantages of and disadvantages to moving forward with this process would be.
Yeah, I think to your point, Kevin, I think there's a significant amount of community engagement that we have to activate over the next couple of months. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to go quickly.
It'll go quick. Yeah.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
Yes. Other questions? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Anything else at the moment? Anything else on your report?
That is it. Thank you. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
We will roll forward to Assistant Superintendent reports. Ms. Bertrand, I think we're hearing from you tonight, correct?
Yeah, I came to you maybe a month ago and talked to you about a grant that we applied for to help us pay for our new elementary Bridges Math program, and I'm excited to say that we got it. We wrote a grant and received $115,000 award, so that's on top of the grant we already got for about $50,000 for our Ready Screener and lessons, so pretty excited about spending that money. We put the order in, materials have been in the hallway, but it's fair to say that the Department of Meadow was pretty impressed with our process of adoption, and they're readily willing to approve that grant, so, yeah.
Great.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing that.
Celebration.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Any questions, comments, or things on that?
Thanks.
Just
Wonderful
thank you.
work.
Yeah, we thought it was great. Thank you.
All right. Anything else for Assistant Superintendent reports?
No, I have things coming up.
Good.
pretty hard.
Okay. We'll come back to All right, school committee chair report, not a lot on my end, other than to say again, a note of appreciation for all of our educators and staff who are in the buildings working hard this summer, and all of our educators and staff who are working hard at home as well, planning for the beginning of the school year. And to families in the community, check your emails. There have been a few emails that have come out over the last week from principals at all of the different schools. So there are a couple of fun events planned, some meet and greets on the schedule. So check your emails, see what's coming up. The beginning of the school year is rapidly approaching, and we as a committee wish everyone a safe and healthy and happy, enjoyable rest of summer. All right, our student representative is not here tonight. Is there anyone that has a report? We're good. Okay. All right, other reports. I do not see anything for our other reports listed, but we'll go through them really quickly. LPVC.
The next meeting is August 24th.
Awesome. All right, so we'll hear next time. Energy and sustainability.
No report.
No report. SEAL.
SEAL, Special Education Alliance of Long Meadow. I was in contact with Jean Fontaine. I see her on the screen here. I see her name anyway. And Megan and Diane, the leaders of SEAL. And so I know that they have been in contact with each other and are planning to meet. And then I'll hopefully be meeting with them towards the end of August. But plans are underway for SEAL, and it's going to be another exciting. They've got workshops planned again or in mind, and so we'll just start the end of August, encouraging y'all to reach out to SEAL and visit the website and make contact.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tax Ceiling Task Force. Jamie is not here. Does anyone know if there was anything? No.
No report.
Thank you. All right, subcommittee reports. Our finance subcommittee met yesterday. I think, Kevin, you're taking this one?
Tom is going to lead us off.
All right, there you go.
Thank you. We met yesterday morning. Mr. Hench will continue as role as chair of the subcommittee. The committee also reviewed some initial final reports for FY22. We're still processing some adjusting journal entries and some transactions. So I anticipate bringing those final reports, final numbers to Finance Sub sometime in the near future, and then to the full committee for review. And if there's any action that will be needed, we can address it at the time. Food service, we had a conversation about the food service renewal and prices for FY23 for next school year. It is on the school committee agenda a little later, so we can address that then. We had just a brief conversation about FY23, the budget, as there's still some hiring going on. There have been a number of positions that are vacant, resignations that weren't necessarily planned in the budget, so we're tracking that attrition at this point, but we'll probably have a better idea of where we land with that, I'd say, in the next month, as we're still hiring and filling those roles that are vacant and posted. So we'll keep you posted. And the last item, the town manager, Lynn Simmons, was present to have a conversation with Finance Subcommittee regarding electric vehicle charging stations. She informed the subcommittee that there are four public buildings that are receiving charging stations. They're at the Adult Center, DPW, Wolf Swamp Fields, and here at the high school. They cost about $30,000 for the purchase of the actual station and installation. Eversource, as part of the agreement, has already done a lot of the site work in preparation for the installation. I believe two of the sites, and I don't recall which two, but two of them I believe are either ready to go online or soon to be online.
It sounded like the Adult Center and the DPW were
Yeah.
the two early ones. And they said they had the one ordered for Wolf Swamp, but it's not there yet.
So they do have a grant to offset a portion of the cost for the ones to be installed here at the high school, which there are spots here on the back parking lot off of William Street. There are 4 parking spaces right along the fence that I believe are designated where those EV stations will be installed. They still have about $18,000 that would be needed. I would say there was a good dialogue back and forth with the Finance Subcommittee and the town manager. Subsequent to that conversation, the town manager asked if we could table it, no action tonight, for the request, as there's some more information and conversation I think that Finance Sub would like to have regarding it. So no action needed, but I would say the project will move forward, but it may be at least months. I think she said the lead time was 4 to 5 months for the stations, once they're ordered, to come in and get installed. So it could be even longer than that before we actually see the installation and those stations go online. So again, we can table it tonight, but just to keep you aware of what's going on with that. Kevin, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I was hoping to add one thing. I just wanted the revolving accounts. I thought we had a good discussion about the athletics, and I think it might be useful just to update the committee that likely will come to the committee later on. Does that
Yeah,
make
sure.
sense?
Yeah. One of the conversations with the FY22 budget reports was a report on our revolving accounts. So accounts that carry from year to year, they receive revenue from various, whether it be fees or other sources, and it records the expenditures. So one of the conversations regarding athletics was this year there was about a $230,000 shortfall in the overall revenue versus expenditures. So there will be some of the journal entries I was referring to earlier will be processed to address that. But we had a good conversation in regards to the cost of the overall program, the amount of money the general fund we budget, the school committee approves in the budget supporting athletics, and the fees we charge, and looking at the cost of surrounding communities. Might there be a interest in looking at what our fees are? Do we need to possibly take some action? So I think it's all information that I'll be bringing back to Finance Sub for more conversation on in the future. Does that kind of cover it for the most part?
Yeah. I mean, I think just a heads up.
Yeah,
It'll be coming back to the big.
I think one of the pieces that's been concerning is the cost of transportation. So it's very challenging finding school buses available, especially at the end of the school day. So for 3 o'clock, 3:30, we have not had much luck. We have we would work with the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative if they have availability, but most of the time they don't have a bus available till 3:45 or 4 o'clock. We have a secondary vendor that we would go to also for if they can fill in. In most cases, we've had to go to a coach bus company, and the cost is 2 to 3 times more expensive than what we would pay through LPVEC or the secondary vendor. We had to do that a lot. I would say our transportation costs more than doubled, almost 2.5 times the amount of what we were paying pre-pandemic. So it's definitely, an impact on the program. Even cost of officials are going up. So just, like with everything, costs are going up, and our revenue is probably staying about the same. So it was something I wanted Finance Sub to be aware of. We most certainly will bring more information and I think a report to the full committee at some point in the future. And I think that's it for Finance Sub. We will be discussing the food service renewal a little later on the agenda, unless there's any questions.
Yep, Gianna, go for it.
Thanks for all that, Tom. Do we know, on any given day, how many buses we use at the end of the day for transportation for athletics?
Well, it really depends, Gianna, on a given day. How many games we have that are away versus home.
Yeah.
I would say we can need up to 4 buses. A lot of it also depends on our varsity and JV traveling together on the bus. If they're close, we try to use the same bus so kids aren't sitting at the field for 4 or 5 hours. So it really is dependent upon the schedule and where the games are located and the time of the games.
Yeah.
I know a number of communities are trying to do later games, in the evening or late afternoon. Not every community has lights on their fields.
Yeah.
I also know a few years back we had some issues with West Nile virus, and so games had to be concluded by dusk, so that also complicated transportation. So I would say on average we probably use 2 to 3, but I could say it could be upwards of 4 or 5.
Yeah, because I was wondering, could we, buy bus, I don't know, this could be like a super silly statement, but like, you know, like colleges have their own
Yeah.
buses. I know certainly they have a lot of money too, but
We most certainly could look at it. I think that opens up a whole nother challenge of where is it housed, maintenance, a driver with the appropriate license, finding somebody who's available just at that time. But something, you know, I could talk to LPVEC. I know the cost of buses are also very expensive these days, so even getting a used one, you have to be careful what you buy in terms of how long will it last you in terms of reliability and that. So
yeah, yeah. I'm just thinking when you said the cost doubled from pre-pandemic, like, you know, is that like a couple $100,000? Is that
No,
like,
I
you know,
want to
like-
say pre-pandemic it was in the 60s. I think this year, like I said, it was over 130,000, I believe.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right, moving forward from Finance Subcommittee then, Policy Sub, Curriculum Sub, and Evaluation, no reports.
Nick, can I just say something
Oh,
about
yeah.
policy sub?
Sure.
I just want to say it out loud that we need to set up our meeting. Like, I feel like I have not, we need to set up our meeting, so I don't know if we do that now, or if I just reach out to you, Diane?
That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
And a heads up on that note that also requested that Curriculum Sub try to get together for sometime in September. So those of you who are on Curriculum Sub, keep an eye out for that email. All right, Evaluation Sub, no report tonight, and Naming Committee. We are on to Naming Committee. Kevin, that is you, right?
Yes, Marty, do you mind taking it?
Sure, yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. So the school committee had received a petition from a number of sort of former colleagues and friends of John Fitzgerald. John, as all of you know, longtime school committee member, longtime Long Meadow educator in the history department at Long Meadow High School. And so the petition was to consider naming a meeting room after John, and I think there was some general consensus that John was sort of worthy of consideration. He contributed a significant amount to Long Meadow Public Schools, to the school committee, to the community as a whole. Very civically minded individual who was very active in civic life in Long Meadow for decades. Ultimately, after some discussion, there was an agreement that to bring forward a recommendation to name the History Department Resource Room at Long Meadow High after John Fitzgerald. So John, for those who knew him well, was a bibliophile, great collector of books, great lover of books, prolific reader of books. I knew him as a history teacher who placed a lot of value on having excellent primary source document collections. And so the Long Meadow High has that's been long part of their practice in the history department. And so the naming subcommittee is recommending to the full committee that the high school department resource room be named after John Fitzgerald. I think it's a fitting tribute to somebody who's contributed a lot to the town and the school. And so the process would be, if it were acceptable to the committee, if the recommendation were acceptable to the committee, would be to schedule a public hearing on this matter. This is part of your policy. Your policy requires that the naming committee come together, that bring forward a recommendation to the full committee. If it's acceptable to the full committee, there's a requirement in your policy to establish a public hearing for consideration of that. And then following the public hearing, it would be brought back to the full committee for a final vote at a future meeting. So the naming subcommittee had roughed out the potential for a public hearing, if the committee wanted to schedule one, on August 23rd, and then a potential vote on this matter at your meeting on September 13th. So if the committee is in favor of the recommendation of the naming subcommittee, it would demonstrate that, I suppose, by scheduling a public hearing on the 23rd of August.
You don't need a motion.
We don't need a motion.
Don't need a motion.
Not to schedule.
Not a motion
Not
to
to
schedule a public hearing. Yeah,
Correct.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh.
All
Unless
right.
there's-
Questions on that process before we move forward? Any comments on the idea of hosting a public meeting or a public hearing during our meeting on August 23rd pertaining to the recommendation that the History Department's resource room at Long Meadow High be named in honor of Mr. John Fitzgerald?
Are we doing thumbs up, like,
That works.
yeah, that's,
Yes.
Consensus?
All right, everyone is good?
Do we need a
Can I just
motion?
recommend
Yes,
that
please.
when they name the room, that they use his middle initial, because he was he always wanted his middle initial used
Very good
in
to know.
everything we did.
Absolutely.
And knowing
Yes.
that,
There you go.
I think we should.
All right. It does say Mr. John J. Fitzgerald. We'll make sure that we
Okay.
include that in our motion when we get to that.
Yeah, I think he'd like that.
Wonderful.
So do we need a motion
We
to?
should.
We do not. We
No,
will,
no, I guess, Marty, my question is to you about, like, you said, if the school committee approves this, like, do we need a motion and approval now so that?
I was thinking the motion would be to schedule the public hearing.
Oh,
but
okay,
Diane-
okay.
But
I don't
Diane's
think we need
saying that you
one.
don't necessarily need the motion. You can schedule the public hearing without a vote. And your ultimate vote would come following that public hearing on
Okay.
September
Okay.
13th, so.
Thank you for the
okay, yeah.
clarification.
all right, for those listening at home, there will be a public hearing during our August 23rd meeting regarding this recommendation for naming this room. And then we will bring it back to the committee on the 13th of September. Other questions pertaining to this? So one more piece of this is that because the naming committee is not expected to hold another meeting, we do have minutes that were included in the packet for review and approval, and there is a recommended motion to that end.
I move that the school committee approve the minutes of the July 21st, 2022 naming subcommittee as presented.
All right, there is a motion. Is there a second?
second.
Thank you. All right, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Is it appropriate to vote yes, even though I wasn't in attendance at this meeting?
Yes, if you were
Okay.
able to review the minutes.
I was
and-
able to.
That was
Then
my
yes.
question, too. Thank you, Mary.
Perfect.
Perfect. Any other questions or comments? All right, we will move to a roll call vote. Zach?
Yes.
Jana?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
There's no one at home still, correct? Yes, okay, and also yes for me. There we are. All right, wonderful. We'll look forward to discussing that at our next meeting. Building Committee Development Subcommittee. Jenna, are you taking that?
Superintendent's going to.
Superintendent's going to do that.
So
Away.
the school committee had, earlier this year, established a subcommittee to work on the development of the school building committee. So that subcommittee met on Tuesday, August 2nd, and it had identified, had nominated and voted for Gianna to serve as chair of that subcommittee. The purpose of that subcommittee was to bring forward a recommendation to the full committee on the process to establish that school building committee. And so it was a great discussion. Julie, Gianna, and Nicole were present. Ultimately settled on the idea of a 16-member school building committee with 9 voting members. Help me out if my math is wrong, no, 9 voting members. So most of the members on this committee would be employees of the town or the school department who would serve in an advisory role to that school building committee, and so therefore would not serve in a voting capacity. It's important to work on the development of the subcommittee in partnership with the select board, and it's also important to ensure that we have a subcommittee that is representative and gives voice to all stakeholders. And so the sort of preliminary recommendation of this subcommittee was to establish the building committee to include 2 members of the school committee. The select board must be represented on the school building committee, because the select board is essentially by town charter the local executive officer. So the select board must be represented. The subcommittee also was recommending that the town manager and the superintendent serve in a voting capacity on the school building committee, along with 2 school committee members. And then there would be 4 sort of at-large positions, 2 of which are recommended to be filled by the select board and 2 of which are recommended to be filled by the school committee. The school committee's appointments would be those who are focused on the educational mission and have some understanding of school facilities. The select board appointments would be members, and I'm using the MSBA language here, members with experience in architecture, construction, and engineering. So this is for your consideration. The select board will also be taking this matter up at a future meeting. The thought is that we would use the application procedure that is already in place, that the town uses to establish working committees on the town side. And so if this made sense to the full committee, we would sort of wait for the select board to also take this up. And assuming there would be general agreement on that, we would release the applications to the wider community. We would blast it out, we'd advertise it, we'd solicit membership for those 4 at-large positions that I was describing. And the naming, the subcommittee responsible for this work would review those applicants and bring back a recommendation to the full school committee for the 2 at-large positions that the school committee would appoint to the school building committee. So lots of committees in that, and I may have lost you. I saw some eyes getting crossed there, but it's a thoughtful process. I really like the direction that the subcommittee is recommending here, to have a odd number, manageable number of voting members, along with school and town employees who would be there in an advisory capacity to that school building committee. School building committees operate under Mass General Law. They are subject to public meeting law and the open meeting law, and so this would be a committee that would likely, we try to keep the membership intact throughout the life of the project, but we understand that sometimes people come and go and have to step down from service, and others have to be identified. But the hope is that you can establish a stable school building committee to oversee this project for several years. So.
All right, we'll open that up to questions. I'm sure there are questions and/or comments. Yes, all right. I saw Kevin first and then Mary.
Yeah, thank you, Marty. Very helpful. And I think this looks really good. I just had 2 questions. Listed as number 1 is MCPPO.
Yeah.
Chad Thompson,
Yeah.
what is that?
Apologies for the acronym there. The MCPPO is a purchasing agent, stands for procurement
there's
officer.
a certification in terms of mass procurement law. So there's a course that you have to go through and get the certification. I don't know what the acronym actually stands for, mass something procurement. But you have to have this certification in order to be MCPPO certified.
And so Chad Thompson is a town employee?
Chad is the procurement manager for the town of Long Meadow.
Okay,
He, as far as I know, the only one in town who currently has his certification.
okay.
So
So
you-
that's important.
He would be there to oversee the bid process and make sure that all the purchasing associated with the project was done per Mass General Law.
Yeah, contract and amendments.
Okay, and then the second question is, am I understanding correctly, like, there's no way that we're going to identify an owner project manager now?
Correct.
Right, that happens later on in the process.
Correct.
So I guess I just want to make sure I understand, like, which of these things are going to get filled now and which come later.
Yeah.
I mean, I get that the school committee is only soliciting applications for those 2 positions, but I think it's helpful for us to know, like, 15 of the 16 happen now and 1 happens later, or whatever.
Yeah, really, the only position that is sort of TBD and would be filled in down the road would be the owner's project manager.
Okay.
Who serves, who's a representative that's authorized to oversee construction in the state. So the OPM would come later. That we would have to put out a bid for OPM services at some point. And following that, we'd identify an OPM to work with us and to work with the architect and to work with a contractor potentially. But so that comes later. But all the other positions, the purchasing officer, the local executive officer in the form of the select board, the town manager, school committee representation, superintendent representation. Also represented would be the DPW through our facilities director. We would want to have our school principals involved, middle school principals involved, and also a local budget official. Currently, the interim CFO is Paul Pasterzik. Paul's been through it before. I'm not sure how long he would be part of this project potentially, but he would certainly be a great asset to help us kick this off. And then the other 4 positions are the 2 at-large positions filled by the school committee potentially, and the 2 at-large positions potentially filled by the select board. And again, the select board need an opportunity to kind of review this recommendation as well. I've shared it with the town manager. And, we're hopeful that this process is fair and it represents a real, I think it's important to establish, really early on that partnership between the select board and the school committee on these projects. And I think I hope this does that. I hope you see it as trying to accomplish that. So. Thank you.
Mary?
So as the committee makes decisions about our process, will this committee vote on what the recommendations should be? Is that fair to say? And are all of the members of the committee voting members of the committee?
And so when you say the committee...
I mean this one, the
yeah.
school building committee. So I guess they will be undergoing this process in depth and will likely be making some recommendations to our committee? Is that how this is set up, or no?
The school building committee operates, obviously it operates under the town charter and operates under Mass General Law and operates at the direction and approval of the town for funding of feasibility studies and construction and that kind of thing. But it's a self-standing, I'm hesitant to say independent, but it doesn't necessarily report to the school committee or the select board.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the second part of the question was about
Is
all
everyone a
members.
voting member of this independent committee?
Did you want to take that, Jean?
I was just going to say that the folks in yellow are
Okay.
the voting, so there's 9 voting members out of the 16-person
Okay.
committee. And I would add to that, if it's okay, Superintendent, I would
Sure.
add to that, thank you for your overall information about it, and thank you for mentioning, it was a very thoughtful process, and there's a lot of amazing people to be thinking about and considering, to be on this committee. And I just wanted to point out that, again, Superintendent said it was a thoughtful process and wanting to give, a voice to, all of the stakeholders. That was a kind of a big piece of our conversation in terms of making sure to give voice to community members, people that aren't on the select board and people that don't work for the school system, because it is going to be an investment of their time and their energy, and we just wanted to make sure that we were not only allowing them to have a voice, but to also be appreciative of their time and energy, and we felt that that was really important, and that's where, the balance of, that 5 and 4 came to be for the voting members. But it was a, we did have a really good discussion about it, and we just wanted to be appreciative of everybody, but in particular of the community members, whether it's parents or whoever applies. So please apply.
On that note, I was able to speak with the chair of the select board, Josh Levine, earlier in the week, and this is something they're going to be addressing at their next meeting as well, but we were able to also start discussing application process and making sure that we are getting the word out in a number of different locations and giving time for community members to respond so that we're able to get plenty of applications from folks who might be interested in. So once they meet on Monday, we will touch base again and maybe have some final plans ready to go for getting those applications out to the public.
So Nicole, does that then changes our application posted date?
Possibly, because they're not meeting until the 15th, so we don't want to post until they've had a chance to meet.
All right, so should we?
Which would also potentially, yes, push back all the other dates as well. We did talk about wanting to have a full 2-week time period for people to apply
Yeah.
and get those applications in and get the word out. So I think we might find that everything gets pushed back a week. That still gives us plenty of time before our deadline of September 30th. But more on that once they have their chance to talk about this at
Okay.
their meeting.
Okay, because I just want, in case anybody is watching or listening, because this information is available to the public, correct, Diane?
The timeline has not been posted.
Got it,
Yep.
okay.
So that'll be posted probably after the select board meeting.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you
And
for
this
that.
is still very much a draft at this point, so hopefully that's, if it does go out, people will understand that the timing is still subject to change as we determine all the details.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Other questions? Yes, Mary?
I just wanted to compliment the committee on the idea that the applicants at large will either have some knowledge of educational facilities. I think that's very helpful. And I like the idea of architecture, construction experience. I'm thinking about, we've had folks come forward, and school safety has been on the minds of a lot of families. And I know that with any building projects, school safety is something that there's checklists, and there will be certain checkpoints, I'm sure, throughout this whole process for school safety. But that is something to consider when we do review applicants, that in addition to this knowledgeable in educational mission, knowledgeable of educational facilities, that there is a school safety element that would, in my opinion, be a very valuable addition. If anybody happens to have that niche knowledge, please apply, is my thinking.
Very good, thank you.
Great point, ma'am. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Anything else to add, Dr. Shea?
No, that's it. There is a potential motion.
Oh, yes, that's right, there is a potential motion, thank you.
Nicole, so sorry
yes,
to
no, please.
interrupt you like that. Just in thinking about what Mary just said, and I know that this is a draft and stuff, but for one of ours, so number, oh, see, I need those bifocals, 11 or 12, do we put educational mission including potentially school safety, or is that?
I think if I'm remembering correctly, there might be some phrasing included in the MSBA documents.
Yeah.
Maybe you can clarify that.
Yeah, the specific phrasing, and I abbreviated a little bit just for the purpose of the minutes here, but there's some specific phrasing in a template that the MSBA gives us for the role of the individual to fill all these various slots.
Okay.
So, when I think about knowledgeable and educational mission, and it also says school facilities, I think that certainly incorporates school safety, and I think I think Mary's right on with the idea that throughout the process, we're going to want to be attentive to school safety at the early stage here when we're establishing the building committee, and then as the process goes on. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that'll even be reflected in the feasibility study, that we'd be looking at the overall safety and security of the buildings. Yeah.
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Other questions or comments? All right, we have a recommended motion in place.
Move that the school committee direct the superintendent and the school building development subcommittee proceed with the establishment of the roster as recommended by the building committee development subcommittee.
It's a mouthful.
Yeah.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, we'll move to a roll call vote. Zach?
Yes.
Gianna?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
And yes for me. Thank you. All right, wonderful. More to come on that, I'm sure, but we will move forward to number 10, ongoing business. Mr. Mazza, we are back to you.
Thank you. Tonight in your packet is a copy of a amendment for our contract with Fresh Picks. They currently are the vendor that provides our food service program operations. This would be our 5th year of service with Fresh Picks providing this service. You may recall I mentioned at our last meeting that we would have to go out through a formal bid process sometime this winter and early spring to select a vendor for a new contract under USDA regulations. So I asked you to table it last meeting because I wasn't quite sure where the program was going to go. Subsequently, the state has announced that they have funding for a pilot program to offer free meals to all students in Massachusetts this year. Previously, the Universal Free Program was offered, funded through the USDA. Now the funding is being provided by the Department of Education. So, unfortunately, we still have to follow certain guidelines under USDA. You may also recall that I mentioned we also have to raise our prices because our current rates aren't at a level sufficient to cover the cost of a meal based on what the USDA provides for a free reimbursement rate. Having said that, by raising the rates, we're not going to collect the money from paid or reduced students. But as students come through the line to get a meal, they will have to use their 4-digit PIN to record the meal. We submit the eligibility of those students to the state, and then the state provides reimbursement. The gap of funds we didn't collect from the students up to the amount USDA reimburses for a free meal. So essentially, it's running the way it's been in the past. The funding is just coming from a different source. Historically, we just checked numbers off a list as students came through the line. This year, we're going to have to use the method pre-COVID of students going through the line and using the PIN pad to record the meal. So it'll be all electronic instead of flowing the way it did. Most certainly could see some challenges related to that. The line moved much quicker as students didn't have to wait, enter their number, wait for it to come up, and be told they can move on. So it may slow the line down a little bit. Students obviously not remembering their numbers. They haven't used them for years. So we most certainly will develop a plan to send that out to students, families. My experience has been elementary kids actually do a much better job remembering the number once it's getting to them. So tonight, I think there are 2 steps I would ask the committee to take. The first would be, although it's not on your agenda, would be a motion to increase the rates by 25 cents across the board. So we would set those rates at $3 for elementary schools, $3.25 for a middle school paid lunch, $3.50 for a high school paid lunch, and $3.75 for an adult lunch. Having set those rates, even though we're not going to charge them, it will help bring us closer to compliance with USDA regulations in terms of what the average paid meal price should be. Once that's done, since the amendment references the rates that we are setting for paid meals, we can then take action on the actual amendment. So hopefully I provided some information. I'm sure there's got to be some questions in regards to the program.
All right, we'll open up for questions then.
You can tell from my face, yeah. Thank you again for all of that, Tom. So let's say a high school student. They get 1 free meal from this program. Is there still other food that they can then buy and eat? Because
Sure. Yeah, there will still be a la carte sold at the high school. We also sell some at the middle school. Students can also purchase a second lunch. It would be at the rate that is set based on if it's approved tonight. But the first meal would be free, similar to the way it's been for the last 2 years. The first meal is free. Any meal after that, students would have to pay for whatever the price is.
Okay. And is it hot meal, or is it like sandwich, or is
Yeah,
it
it's both.
combination?
I think the high school has probably 5 or 6 offerings students can get.
Okay.
Middle school has a few less, and elementary usually there's about 3 choices, usually a hot, a cold, and then salad, sandwiches, or the like.
Yeah. So they will have the option to eat more food, because I'm just thinking of like the portion, they'll have the option to eat more food, but they'll have to pay for that food.
For a second one, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? Mary and then Kevin?
How have we made up for the difference up until now?
Prior to the universal free program, the general fund, the school committee's budget subsidized the operation of the program. Participation was approximately a third or so of our students. Once the universal free program went into effect, we saw an increase to upwards of 55 to 60% participation on average. So we saw a significant increase in the amount of revenue coming in. We were able to continue providing the meals without adding much staff. So operationally, the program's been running very effectively from a financial perspective. Assuming this pilot year goes well and the funding continues and we see this program sustain itself in years to come, Finance Sub had a conversation as part of our report of reinvesting. Obviously, looking to make sure that we have equipment that is working properly, making sure that the terminals at the end of the lines are working well. So we would want to reinvest back into the program. I believe Kevin did ask about subsidizing the cost of the program. I mean, obviously, with a universal free program, we wouldn't be charging for the first meals. It could be difficult trying to subsidize second meals or a la carte. I also think we're going to want to keep an eye on staffing, as having students stop at the register now to enter their information. I'm concerned that it might slow the line down. With more students coming through the line, having to stop at the register, we might need to add more terminals for students to keep the line flowing, so that students are not waiting in line 15, 17 minutes when they only have 25 minutes or so to eat lunch. Especially at elementary, as soon as they're told they can go out, doesn't matter what they have left, most of them are out the door. So we want to make sure we can get them through the line as quick as possible. And if we need to, I would use some of the reserves, the funds that have been built up, to offset that cost with more staff.
Does that answer your question? Or you have
It does. I
follow-up
guess
before?
the reason I'm asking this is because universal free lunch has been excellent, and we have seen an increase in kids accessing food in our buildings. And if we raise the prices, which I know wouldn't necessarily matter this year, it could potentially matter the year after for kids, for some families. And so if we have no plans to subsidize, but we're raising prices this year, even though kids wouldn't be paying for it, we don't necessarily have a guarantee that next year we would have that funding. So I'm just curious if anybody else is thinking about that, or...
I actually asked a similar question.
Yeah.
If you
Oh.
explain it
Yeah.
the exact
Okay.
same way, it was very helpful for me.
Because we're still operating under the USDA National School Lunch Program,
Yep.
they have criteria where every year you have to evaluate what your meal prices are. If they fall below a certain level in regards to what the reimbursement rate is for a free lunch, they require you to increase it. Because they
Okay.
don't want paid meals free meals that the USDA is reimbursing you for, subsidizing the cost that you're charging a lower amount for a paid lunch. So they make you do an analysis of your meals, the average cost, compared it to what the free lunch meal rate is at the USDA. This year, I believe it's $3.31. So if we were to keep our rates where they are, even though we're not collecting the money, we're down at about $3.10. So we're well below the standard that they would want us to be at. We wouldn't have to take this action, but we would have to have a larger increase at some point to be in compliance under USDA guidelines. Maybe the program will change if the state continues to offer subsidized meals in a universal program. Maybe they won't require establishing those paid meals as high, but I think it's new that states are taking on this program that was previously funded by the federal government.
Okay, thank you. That is helpful. Thank you.
Kevin?
And Tom answered my question, which is 55 to 60% of students are taking advantage of the free lunch.
That's what we've seen over the last 2 years. Significant increase once it became, as Mary indicated, more students are participating in the program once it became universally free.
Thank you.
Other questions? I'll just say kudos to the state of Massachusetts for stepping in and filling that gap. I think statewide, that is a very, very important step to have taken, and I hope it continues on.
Great.
Other information? Or are we
No,
ready
I
for-
think, again, I would just want, I recommend a motion on the rates for the meals first before we take action on the amendment for the contract.
And just to clarify, the 25 cents is exactly what puts us back into compliance with the USDA.
Puts us close.
Puts us close, okay.
I think we have to wait and see how the distribution at each level plays out this year.
All right, thank you. Okay, then we have a motion.
I have that ready to go. I move that the school committee approve an increase of 25 cents to the paid lunch prices for the 2022-23 school year. The paid lunch prices will be elementary school $3, middle school $3.25, high school $3.50, and adult $3.75.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Gianna?
I wrote down 360, and you said is it 350 or 360?
350 for
Okay.
high school.
I just read the piece of paper Tom gave me.
All right, any other discussion? We will move to a roll call vote. Zach? Thank you. Gianna?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
And yes for me. All right, we have another motion on this topic.
I move that the school committee renew the contract with Fresh Picks Cafe, a division of cafe services, for the 2022-23 school year as presented, and authorize the chair to sign on behalf of the school committee.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, we move to a roll call vote. Zach?
Yes.
Gianna?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
And yes for me as well. All right, fantastic. Moving forward, we are looking at the schedule of school committee meetings. Our calendar currently has us scheduled to meet on Tuesday, October 25th, and the fall town meeting is also scheduled for Tuesday, October 25th. So we will need to decide if we are moving our meeting date and when we would like to move it to. We are also that month scheduled to meet on the 11th. So traditionally, we've done things such as move it to another day in the same week, move it to the week after, but then we would be bumping into, we're kind of every other week at that point in the year. So I would recommend us picking another day that same week. If we get to a point where we decide we're good, we can wait to meet again until the November date. It is always easier, as you've said in the past, Kevin, to cancel something than to schedule it at the last moment. So I would recommend that we choose a date, another day that week. Any recommendations? Looking at the school calendars, I know there
Yeah, so
are a
there's-
lot of things by the time we get into
Yeah,
October.
there's a concert at the high school on Wednesday, and then there are half-days of school at the middle schools Thursday and Friday, if that helps you at all.
Are those half-days because of conferences?
Yes,
Yes, and those conferences are evenings, both days?
on Thursday.
Thursday, they're evenings, and Friday,
That
they're
doesn't
not.
help you much.
It does not,
Does the
alas.
select board meet on Monday?
Yeah, that was my
They
next
will
question,
not
is
meet
Monday.
that Monday.
Okay.
It's their off week.
Week before.
It, it
How do we
it
do
might be
Monday?
advisable to have it the night before town meeting, just to,
That might be.
It looks like the best
Why
option of the
anyone?
bunch.
huh?
That might be wise if you have
Right.
an agenda item.
It's an opportunity to
Review.
provide some information potentially about the town meeting the following night.
Perfect. Does the 24th work for the majority of folks who are here? Yes. All right. We will officially move that meeting from Tuesday, October 25th to Monday, October 24th. Thank you. All right. Any further discussion on this?
I moved it for you.
Okay. All right, we are ready to move on to new business. That brings us back to our middle school building, and we have a conversation to have about the compliance certification.
One of the many deliverables during this eligibility period is the sign-off on the initial compliance certification. There's a copy of it in your meeting packet. Essentially, this dense document is the town's commitment to abide by the MSBA grant program. It's our commitment to show that we will be in compliance with the provisions of the relevant state statutes and regulations, that we'll be in compliance with the open meeting law, that we would work collaboratively with the MSBA. It makes it clear, if you read it closely, that this grant program is not a guaranteed program, that we have to seek funding at each relevant stage. It's also a commitment that the buildings are sort of free and clear and eligible for a project, potentially. So I did ask our attorney to review it, Sarah Spatafor from Murphy, Hesse, Toomey and Lane. She had no objection. Her take on it was similar to mine, that it is sort of boilerplate language. We don't have the liberty to amend it. It's what we're required to agree to if we are to move forward in partnership with the MSBA. So your vote, so it's a consideration whether or not you would authorize the chair to sign it. And then additionally, the select board needs to review and sign off on this document as well.
All right, questions or discussions on this? Can we have a possible motion?
I move that the school committee approve the MSBA's initial compliance certification associated with the Glenbrook Middle School building project and authorize the chair and superintendent to sign the certification.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Gianna?
I just want to say thank you for consulting the attorney.
It's good peace of mind when you're signing off on legal agreements, for sure. Yeah.
Any further discussion or questions? All right, we'll move to a roll call vote. Zach?
Yes.
Gianna?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
And yes for me. Thank you. All right. I do not see anything on our agenda further other than the next recommended motion.
Move that the school committee meet in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Purpose 2, to conduct a strategy session in preparation with collective bargaining with Units A, E, and Purpose 7, consideration of release of executive session minutes of previous meetings to reconvene into open session.
All right. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
Thank you. All right, just a note for those who are watching that, again, we will be reconvening into open session, and otherwise, we will now, any further discussion? And we will move to a vote. Zach?
Yes.
Gianna?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
And yes for me. We are officially in executive session. We will see you again soon. We'll try again. Can you guys hear us?
Yes, it just came back.
Perfect.
All right.
We're ready when you are.
All right, stand by. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, welcome back to the August 9th meeting. We have a few motions to end our evening.
I move that the school committee approve the memorandum of agreement with the Long Meadow Education Association, Unit A, dated August 3rd, 2022, regarding coverage of one section of science and one section of social studies at Glenbrook Middle School for the 2022-23 school year.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mary. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Zach?
Yes.
Gianna?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
And yes for me. We have another motion.
I move that the school committee approve the memorandum of agreement with the Long Meadow Education Association, Unit E, dated August 9th, 2022, to add recognition of the physical therapist.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? We'll move to a roll call vote. Zach?
Yes.
Gianna?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
And yes for me. And we have one last.
I move that the school committee approve the memorandum of agreement with the Long Meadow Education Association, Unit A, dated August 9th, 2022, to add recognition of the academic coaches.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mary. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Zach?
Yes.
Gianna?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
And yes for me as well. All right, that concludes our business. We have one last motion, if anyone would like to make that.
I move that the school committee adjourn the August 9th, 2022 school committee meeting.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Gianna. All right, any discussion? Roll call vote. Zach?
Yes.
Gianna?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
And yes for me. Thank you very much, and we will see everyone in 2 weeks. Have a lovely evening.